Alright, guys. As I promised, we got the mic, right? We got the mic. Actually, okay, alright. This is actually my second time recording because I already recorded the full video. And then I watched it back and the fucking audio is so fried because I never used a microphone before. And so I clipped the fucking receiver to my, literally 1 centimeter away from my mouth. And so it wasn't a good idea. So hey, note to self, don't fucking put the mic literally right in front of your face. But yeah, we got that. Right? No more cars, hopefully, in the background. We'll see. No promises, right? But we got it, right? So, anyways, right? So, I had this thing, right? I want to talk about overthinking today, right? But what's weird for me is that there's no middle ground with this, right? Either I don't think at all and I just go, work, hustle, or I overthink everything, right? And I have a fantastic habit of turning simple situations or actions on paper just into a whole analysis, right? Everything becomes a puzzle and a mystery, right? And a lot of times my mind just fills in the gaps and I just make up evidence with assumptions for just dramatic effect, right? When most likely nothing is happening. That's most of the time just nothing is happening. I'm just making shit up, right? But the most frustrating part is, and even in the moment, right, I'm keenly aware of what I'm doing, right? I'm aware that I'm probably overthinking something, right? But the constant thoughts of what ifs sort of overload my head, right? For example, let's say the smallest change in someone's behavior, right? It could open up just a doorway of possibilities for what I could have done wrong, right? Did I do something wrong? Right, etc. And a change in the way they text, right? Maybe a slightly delayed response, right? I can't fucking talk today. What's going on? And sometimes, right, it could be something that doesn't even really bother me, right? Maybe it doesn't bother me at all, but it doesn't stop the fact that I'm still overthinking about it, right? I'll still replay situations and words I've said in my head, trying to figure out where it went wrong, if anything went wrong, right? And most likely, that's the thing, nothing went wrong, right? Nothing happened. And that's the thing about constantly overthinking about stuff, right? And mainly I'm talking about, again, just mainly centered around overthinking concerning relationships, right? And just taking a step back to clearly see yourself, what you're doing, you can say it's a bit irrational. Just take a step back and just look at what you're doing, right? But in the moment, you don't think that, right? You don't think overthinking is irrational. In fact, if anything, actually, you almost feel like overthinking seems like the responsible thing to do, right? It's the right thing to do. Because a lot of times, sometimes people don't say how they feel out loud, and they don't say the important things out loud in a way that makes it obvious, right? So once in a while, sometimes overthinking about small situations, it could potentially reveal, something that could pose as a legitimate concern, right? Because, you don't say everything you think, right? So you think to yourself, it's just paying attention, right? You're being observant, right? You're just you're being a good person, right? And, whether it's regarding yourself or the other person, it's really, really interesting because, as I said, for myself, there's no middle ground, right? I have some relationships where, I really never have to overthink at all. This kind of stuff really isn't a factor whatsoever, right? Everything kind of just flows. Everything I say, everything we do, whatever shit, right? And it just kind of flows, right? And then I have other relationships with other people where, I'm constantly overthinking situations on the daily. Things they say, things I do, right? And the onus isn't on them. I'm not trying to blame them. I'm also not saying, one kind of relationship is better than the other. That is just not the case. Oftentimes, it just depends on the person and their styles of communication, etc., what kind of person they are. And so the onus, once again, is not on them, right? I'm not trying to blame the other person for me overthinking. That's not what I'm trying to do, right? I know for the most part, it's in my own head. Right, and I also am not trying to say, just to preface once again, right? If I'm constantly overthinking, that these kind of relationships, it's not like they're bad for me either. For the most part, that's not what I mean either. Right? But again, it's those small sort of what if percentage that, okay, maybe there is something here, or maybe there is something happening here, right? That sort of takes over, and somewhere along the line, right? All this kind of understanding and observing you feel like you're doing, it can quickly become an obsession, right? And it can really start to stress you out. Like, I'll have moments personally, right, where maybe something that probably most people just glance over, or maybe only think about for a couple of minutes, right? Let's say, again, like a simple text or a message or something, right? I'll sit there and ponder about it for hours, right? It maybe even days, right? And it starts to seep into my kind of everyday life and tasks, right? To the point where a lot of times I can't even focus on what I'm doing at hand. Because of, these kind of overthinking sort of takes over everything, right? Because I don't want to be a problem for other people, right? I hate being a problem. I don't want to be a burden, right? I hate being a burden. And I also don't want to miss something that could possibly be important to them, right? But a lot of times, I think it's difficult to distinguish sort of whether the scenarios that are dominating my head, my thoughts, are sort of rooted in reality, or it's just sort of make-believe, right? And honestly, a lot of times it's probably a mixture of both, right? Because there is an element of truth to it, a lot of times, oftentimes, as there is. But I start to fill in the blanks, like I said, with my own assumptions, right? Which a lot of times makes the situation a lot more serious than maybe it actually is, right? So, for example, it could go like this, right? So, let's say something happens and maybe I see them behave differently in a certain way. Well, I think to myself, okay, so let's start step by step, right? Did I do something to make them mad? Okay. Right? Why aren't they texting the same anymore? Why aren't they responding to my text, right? Did I say something? Okay, maybe I said something, right? I probably said something. Cool. All right, but if they're mad over this, right, it probably means it wasn't a one-time thing, because it's kind of hard for me to see, if they're just mad over one thing, right? It's probably a build-up, right? Probably, so there's a build-up, right? Which means whatever I just did, this thing right now, I probably also did it in the past, right? Probably did it multiple times. All right, so now I got to figure it out. Okay, what did I do? Or what did I say, wrong in the past? All right, they're mad at me, right? They're mad at me, right? And so, it just goes on like that, right? So that's the cycle, right? It's just stuff like that, right? And it can be very exhausting, right? Really exhausting. Like, seriously. And the thing is, it's not even just with the negative stuff, right? It's also the positive things. It's the good things, right? It's the good times. The times I was happy with someone, right? The times I had fun and just laughed in the heat of the moment, right? Just good times, right? I fucking lost track of counting how many times I've done this shit, right? And it's all in my head, right? Maybe, for example, someone sends me, let's say a cute emoji, or, me personally, I never receive gifts, right? But whenever it does happen, it stands out to me a lot, right? So, for example, even something stupid, right? Somebody sends me a skin in a game. Right? Maybe someone I know likes my profile or post, right? And suddenly it's almost like I'm planning my whole future with them, right? All it takes is the smallest bit of attention, and my head starts creating the Netflix documentary. It's already filmed. It's in the works, right? It's and these things sort of that actually happen. Maybe something did actually happen, right? Maybe I did actually receive that gift, right? Somebody actually sent me a skin in game, whatever, right? That certain element. Now it starts to get mixed in with all this doubt, right? And again, it just I make things out, to be a bigger deal than it actually is, and it's it sucks a lot of times, right? I hate it, and this also ties into what I've talked about caring too much, right? The people that really matter. This overthinking thing becomes way more severe and way more prevalent the more you care. Right? Because, as I said, there is an element where you think to yourself, it is just the right thing to do, right? It's being responsible, just overthinking about things. Because it's over considering, right? And you can't ever have too much over consideration, right? It's just being responsible. And if you care about them, right? And if you care about the relationship, it's only right that you think about the smallest things, right? And interactions, because maybe there's a deeper meaning behind it, right? So you want to understand, right? It's not just because you don't want to hurt them, but it's also because you want them to have a good time with you. So you take in all the good and all the bad. And in a way, I still do feel that that's not a bad way to approach things. Actually, I kind of like that approach, right? This is not a bad way to, kind of see things. But I also do think that if you aren't careful, oftentimes that I'm not, right? It can be an obsession really quick. You might even not realize it till it starts to really get kind of just really take over your life, like I said. And like I said, the last thing you want to obsess about is over another person, right? Obsession, it's never a good thing, right? Almost never a good thing. But last thing you want to do is be obsessed about another person, right? So a lot of times I'll think to myself, right? It's just preparing, right? It's an excuse I make. I do make spontaneous decisions sometimes, like, as a person. I think generally, off topic, but the bigger the decision is life-wise for me, the more spontaneous I can be. Like, if it's very life-changing, I'll just kind of, just like that, right? Whether that's a good thing or not, that's a conversation for another day, right? But back to overthinking, right? It feels like a lot of times it's preparation, right? You're preparing for what could go wrong from the smallest thing, and you sort of build a defense case for what you can possibly do to remedy the situation, which a lot of times, like I said, there's not even a situation to begin with. Like, nothing happened. But the thing is, it's a hopeless battle, right? Because no amount of over-preparation or overthinking will give you direct control of the situation and eliminate all uncertainty, right? It will not... I can't fucking talk. What is going on? It will not eliminate all uncertainty, right? Because you can't control another person, right? You certainly can't control what they think or what they do or what they say, right? So you're obsessing over these things and moments and scenarios when all it does is drain you mentally. You don't have any control over it, right? And that's another thing that I'm realizing as I'm talking about it, right? Uncertainty is dangerous, right? Because it has that potential to cause overthinking about these things, right? But the thing is, uncertainty will always be present, right? Anything worth anything meaning in life, there's no absolute guarantees to it. There's always going to be that level of kind of doubt that you're kind of not sure, right? No matter what kind of person or relationship, you just can't be 100%, certain with everything, right? Not everything that someone's ever thought about is going to be spoken out loud. You don't want that either. That's fucking psycho, right? But the thing is, like, I like certainty. At the very least, I like knowing 100% where I stand with someone, right? If they don't fuck with me, that's cool, right? If they do fuck with me, that's cool too, right? But it's that middle ground. It's that middle ground where seriously starts to mess with me, because I'm terrible with middle ground, right? It drives me nuts. Because a lot of times, I'm left with more questions than answers, right? And that's where kind of overthinking and my Hollywood level imagination thrives at its best, right? It's that uncertainty principle, right? Right in the middle. Kind of like how, bacteria grows best in a, Goldilocks environment. We call it Goldilocks environment. A temperature just right in between, right? Not too hot, not too cold, just kind of disgustingly lukewarm, right? Not dry, not completely wet, just damp, right? And so, that's overthinking, right? It's fucking bacteria, right? It's something that's always been with me my whole life. And, I guess it's always going to be a part of who I am, right? Fundamentally. But I just wish I sort of knew how to wish I had sort of more knowledge of how to have more control over it, right? Because even though a lot of scenarios and things I worried about, maybe those weren't real, right? It didn't actually happen or weren't as serious as I thought. But the stress I had over them was real, right? Those sleepless nights, right? Those sort of, maybe I'll have a moment where I just walk outside, sit on a bench, and just stare at the fucking sky and wonder what the fuck is going on, right? Those moments were very real. And every answer I had created, it creates another question, right? Every question creates another possibility, and on and on and on. But, it does make me wonder how many good things and relationships I may have partially ruined because of this. Maybe not even because there was anything wrong, but maybe because I just convinced myself that there was, just through overthinking, right? Most of the time, trading reality for a made-up possibility, right? Recipe for disaster. You don't want to do that shit. Bad idea. And, I haven't figured it out, right? It's something I'm still learning, trying to let go and maybe sometimes just let things be, right? Especially because my first instinct a lot of times is to observe and analyze. What's the problem? Let's fix it, right? But maybe that's a secret to finding that peace, right? Maybe not all thoughts deserve attention, right? Not every uncertainty means it's a threat. And maybe sometimes just things are just whatever they are. Things just are what they are.